We will also, by the way, be expanding outside of California later this year. We'll be moving into another state that we're really excited about. And we're not able to disclose which state that is just yet. But
it's actually on the whiteboard over there, but maybe we'll just keep that off the podcast.
Today on LawNext, Judicial Analytics. I'm here in Los Angeles at the headquarters of Gavelytics, a company that analyzes docket data to provide insights on judges, such as how a judge is likely to rule on a particular type of motion. And my guests today are Rick Merrill, who's the founder of Gavelytics, and Justin Brownstone, Vice President of Sales and Counsel to the company. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, on to this week's interview. Rick, how are you today?
I'm good, Bob. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. And Justin, how are you?
Great, thanks as well.
So, I actually want to talk a lot about Gavelytics, but I'm actually curious. I was thinking coming out here to Los Angeles about how it seems like Los Angeles doesn't have the same kind of legal tech startup scene that maybe your neighbor to the north, San Francisco, might or something. What's going on here in terms of legal technology? Is there much?
Yeah, good question. It's actually more active than certain people realize. It's certainly less active than the Bay Area. Nobody really, or no segment of the country really competes with the Bay Area for startups. But there's actually becoming an interesting ecosystem of LA-based legal technology companies. So there's us. There's an interesting billing software system called Ping that's coming out. There's Legalmation. There's Evercron. There are quite a few down here. And again, Bay Area is bigger, but there's lately, the last couple of years, been an interesting turn towards legal tech in the LA-based tech community.
Yeah, I know Lexicata is another one that's here. I don't know if you mentioned that, but
no, I didn't mention them. But yeah.
So this is by no plan whatsoever, but as it happens, we are here in September 2018, and it was really just about a year ago that you actually launched this product, although I know the company had been around for, I think, a couple of years even before that, working on building out this product. But Rick, give us a little bit of the history of what the problem was that you encountered, what your background was, and why you started Gavelytics.
Sure. So I'm a former litigator. I spent about a little over 6 years litigating at Greenberg Traurig, one of the many big Am Law 100 firms out there. And my entire career was spent in Los Angeles, and I was a real estate litigator. And so I was primarily in state court as opposed to federal court. And I was always frustrated by the fact that you couldn't meaningfully study your judge. Everybody at Greenberg and firms like it would really engage in guesswork and rely on rumor and anecdote about their judges. And that really bothered me, that here we were a $1 billion law firm and we couldn't meaningfully get insights into our judges' tendencies and act on that basis for the benefit of our client. And that problem really manifested itself in lots of ways. And in particular, we had two cases in my group that went to trial, all the way to trial. And as you know, the big firm level trials are rare because there's so much money at stake, and people typically settle or the cases get dismissed for one reason or another.
At any level, trials are rare, but
yeah. Nowadays, everybody knows the number of trials are going way down. And but in any event, we could not have lost worse at these two trials at the trial court level. It was particularly bad, and we felt that we had better facts, better law, better lawyers, the whole thing. And we really felt blindsided by the judge. And those two experiences planted a seed in my head, which was that, well, if we had known detailed information about the judge, beyond just the biography, if we had known their tendencies with respect to particular motions, if we got a sense of whether they favored plaintiffs or defendants, or if they preferred certain types of case law as opposed to other types of case law for particular legal issues, if we could have known those things in advance, could we have done different things? Could perhaps we have settled the case, filed different motions, written them a little differently? Could we have made different arguments that perhaps would have been more successful? Could we have moved to get rid of the judge, which, by the way, is something you can do in California early in the case? And so I assumed at the time, and by the way, this is back in 2010 and around that time frame, I assumed that Westlaw and Lexis had a product like this, right? Because they have everything, or at least that was the perception. And they really didn't. So I assume that maybe Bloomberg or Walters Cloyers or some of the other companies had a product like this that really studied state court judges. I'm aware, of course, that there are a handful of federal-focused products that have been out for a while, but there really was next to nothing meaningful at the state court level.
Yeah.
So
at that point, they're getting into it now, or they're trying to get into it.
Yeah, certainly, yes. So some are moving into the space. Nobody that I'm aware of is doing what we do at the state court level, at the level of sophistication that we do. But I mean, that will change at some point tomorrow, certainly. But back then there was basically zero. Right now there's just one. It's really us. But in any event, I perceived it as a big business opportunity. And so I left the firm in 2015 to start the business. My wife thought I was crazy. A lot of people thought I was crazy, to leave a good job.
I hear that from a lot of founders of startups.
Yeah,
their spouses are not all that thrilled with the idea.
You've got to get your spouse on board. So if there's any prospective entrepreneurs listening, do not do anything without having your spouse, because you need the support. And I certainly did. And so in any event, left the firm in the middle of 2015, spent some time putting the deck together, went out to raise money. We closed our first round in early 2016. Hired the team, built out the proof of concept, launched it commercially, as you pointed out, almost exactly a year ago today. I mean, when is it, Justin? I knew it was
October, first week of October.
Yeah,
September 26th was the date I blogged about it. September 26th, 2017. Was
it was very close. Yeah. And so
it came out the week after.
Yeah, so in any event, it was right around a year ago that it launched commercially, and it took about a year and a half to build. I mean, it's hard to do what we do. That's why there's not 20 other Gavelytics. And so anyway, we're happy to still be alive a year later.
Yeah. What's the hard part about it?
There are two principal challenges with this business as opposed to the services that focus on the federal system. So in the federal system, you have PACER. So if you want to study judges in the federal level, you go cut a deal with PACER, you get some documents together, and you try to do some work on them. At the state court level, there is no PACER. And so the aggregation of the documents is much more difficult. And then once you have the documents, if you can even get them and get enough of them at a price that won't bankrupt you, it's completely unstructured data. It's a complete disaster. It's totally different than PACER data. And so you have to go fix these things and have human lawyers review them and very sophisticated AI software that we've written. You need that to review everything at scale and do it accurately and so on. So there are a host of challenges that have to be overcome at scale in order to do a business like this.
So describe what Gavelytics does. What is the product?
Yeah, so Gavelytics, we can sum it up as it's a service that tells litigators in advance what their judges do and why. And so what we do is we measure across many, many dimensions, judicial tendencies. And so all lawyers know sort of intuitively or based on their experience that judges are different from one another. And that's exactly what you'd expect. Judges are human and they have different life experiences, different worldviews, different legal philosophies, and so on. And even though in theory they're all applying the same law, you can get wildly different outcomes at the trial court level, particularly in state court, where the judges may or may not be as sophisticated or as resource rich as they are in the federal system. And so what we do is we've amassed millions and millions of records from various trial courts around the country. And we've set up a set of internal processes guided by AI and also human lawyer review that teases out patterns of decision making. So we can tell you, for example, how fast or slow a judge is across a number of dimensions. We can tell you whether the judge prefers plaintiffs or defendants at bench trial. We can tell you how the judge tends to rule on over 100 different types of motions broken down by filing party and also case type. And it can get very granular. So you could say, for example, all right, well, what does this judge tend to do with summary judgment motions in class actions? And, you can drill down and study that. We also have, right now in the product, thousands and thousands and thousands of actual trial court rulings that you can search through. So not only can you understand the statistics of what a judge does, you can actually drill down into the rulings and understand why the judge is doing what they're doing. And so really at a high level, what we're trying to accomplish here is to fill in the information gap that most lawyers have with respect to their judge.
what is your coverage right now? You're still just in California. What counties or jurisdictions in California are you providing analytics for?
Sure. So right now we have coverage of 11 counties in California, and we'll be adding a few more before the end of the year, and certainly more counties in California into next year. But we right now cover the key counties. As you'd expect, not every county is equally important with respect to litigation volume. So here in California, there are 58 different counties, and some of them have literally 2 judges and populations of like 500 people. And so we don't cover those. But the ones that matter, we do cover. And so we're happy with that. But we will also, by the way, be expanding outside of California later this year. We'll be moving into another state that we're really excited about. And we're not able to disclose which state that is just yet. I'll tell you off the record, Bob, but
it's actually on the whiteboard over there, but maybe we'll just keep that off the podcast.
That's true, Bob. You can probably see it from where you're sitting if you look over there. But anyway,
our full calendar of counties is actually up there.
That's funny.
We'll keep it off the podcast.
Yeah. We'll chat separately about it. But at any event, we're really happy about that, and we've got a number of really, really compelling new features coming out this year and early into next year. We're going to be announcing at least one really, really interesting partnership that we're working on with a major legal tech industry player that we'll be announcing in a few weeks. That's going to be a really tremendous extension of what we do. It's going to be great for our clients.
To integrate with another platform in some way? Is that kind of an idea?
Yes, and it's sort of a non-obvious integration. It's not one. I suspect most people, if they thought about it, they wouldn't be able to guess which it is, but it'll make a lot of sense when it's announced. So we're real happy about that and very excited.
Now I want to just sit here and guess for 20 minutes, but
yeah. So we, like I said, off the record, we can chat about it. So,
Justin, you've been sitting here very quietly and patiently, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about how you work as in sales work with clients. You can talk about how lawyers are using this, but actually I wanted to first ask you how you got involved with the company and what your background is.
Well, I'm not sure. I think Rick mentioned before we started the podcast, but we went to law school together. We both graduated UCLA together in 2009. I worked at Quinn Emanuel and then a lip boutique in another part of LA. And Rick told me about the idea for this company years ago, before it started, and I thought it was a fantastic idea. I never thought of it. I wasn't aware of that existing, and I basically said to Rick, I want to be a part of this. I'll quit, and as soon as, if you're able to start this, please let me join. So that's how I got involved.
But it really didn't exist. Not just Gavelytics wasn't necessarily the first, but the idea of doing analytics on docket. First of all, you couldn't get docket data. That wasn't data. It was paper up to a certain point. In some states, it still is. And then the idea of doing analytics on it is a pretty recent invention, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, and Rick had some key insights into how to get that data and how to make it possible to turn it into something meaningful once you acquire it. As you mentioned, the problem with counties, it's that they're each in a different format. So if you build software that reads CD Cal, you've built software that reads the entire district court system. You build software that reads LA Superior Court, like we've done, you now have to build new software for Riverside, new software for San Mateo and Santa Clara. And Rick had some great insights into how to make that possible.
And going into other states would be the same challenge.
Exactly. So that's my background. It's my first sales job, to be honest. So I might be doing a terrible job so far, but I personally love the product and would have used it myself.
You're still waiting for your first sale, or
no? We're doing quite well.
You wouldn't be here if that were the case.
No, we've signed up a lot of major firms, so we're very excited about how it's gone so far.
Good. So how are firms using this? What are lawyers liking about it? When you go in and talk to them about it, what's the kind of light bulb that goes off as they're hearing what you're explaining?
Well, in addition to what Rick mentioned, this idea of getting all kinds of information that's useful for strategic purposes, actually using it for pitches is one of the biggest things we're seeing with a product. So before a case even comes in the door, we have clients using the product to try and win that case and tell a prospective client, we actually know way more about the judge than the other client or other potential law firm in the beauty pageant. So that's been really interesting because that's not something I was ever involved in as an associate or as much. But
So you're giving them data on the firms they're going up against, or on how their firm?
Well, actually both. I was going to get to that, which is kind of interesting. So one, right with the platform right now, there's tons of information about judges. And so they can say, okay, you've been assigned a case in front of Judge Fruin. I'm picking a random judge. And they can say, opposing counsel, this is their strategy. Our strategy is going to be tailored particularly to this judge if you hire us. We know that he's twice as slow to get to trial. He doesn't grant summary judgment motions. He hates opposing counsel because of XYZ. Here's our strategy. And that's going to separate you in a pitch to win business. Separate from that, we also...
Until everybody else has the analytics.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I suppose we'd be okay with that. We also do custom queries for our clients. So there's everything our product does, and we'll work with clients to generate information that's not already in the product. We have a number of data scientists on staff who can do this for them. So a lot of that is both internal intelligence and competitive intelligence. So we're pitching against another firm. Can you tell us how many appearances our firm has had in employment matters or in front of this judge in the last decade versus this other firm we're aware of? Or how many trials have we had in the last year? So helping clients prepare information like that is a big part of how we're working with them over time.
Yeah. And is that something that the lawyers understand, or are you kind of dealing with the marketing people in selling that side of the product?
It varies firm by firm. So librarians are probably the number one people we work with, but we definitely work with partners and marketing professionals as well at firms. And we've even, at a couple of firms, we've started to work with pricing departments as well. And they've been using our data to help with that. So
to help estimate a budget for a case and figure out how long it's going to drag on or not drag on.
Exactly. I realize I'm nodding. I should probably answer verbally on a podcast. So yes, that's exactly right.
Good point. Good point. I should have told you that.
We had a question the other day. I'm just going to share this because I thought it was great. I've been telling people, our product has a lot of data, and Rick's mentioned some of it. And I mentioned we do these custom reports. We had a client ask us the other day, opposing counsel says they have a trial coming up next month. Is that true? And that's something we were able to check very easily. And the answer was no, by the way. And
that's amazing. I didn't know this.
Oh yeah, I'll show you the email chain. It's pretty funny. So,
but that's not just a matter of calendaring or something. That's something that why would you need a data analytics product to get an answer to something like that?
Well, there's no way to search California dockets, as far as I'm aware, other than us. If you wanted to know, I want to know every case that this attorney has currently, and if any of them are scheduled for trial and when they're scheduled for trial. I'm not aware of a way to do that other than through us. And so that's not something we advertise or had ever thought about doing, but what's been a lot of fun in terms of working with a lot of different clients now is the different types of requests that come in. So that's why I just mentioned that one. Yeah, there's pricing, there's pitching, but now we're starting to get some really creative uses of the product like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Because for most courts in California, you have to go court by court by court to search.
And you can't. As far as I'm aware, there's no way to search. But unlike Pacer, you can't search. Maybe you can search by attorney name in some courts.
You can search by party and attorney name in some courts in California. Because I've done it for...
You can search by party, but often not by attorney name. And you certainly can't search by motion or trial or things like that. Huh. We can do all those things for you.
And there's often, too, a big fee for each search. So you can end up spending hundreds of dollars, chasing something, in random counties. And it's just not... It's not cost effective at scale.
Yeah, right. I can understand that. So strategy, marketing, those are the big areas where they're using it.
And pitches, yeah.
Marketing, that's what
the ruling database has changed it a little bit too. So that wasn't part of the product when it rolled out.
Yeah.
We now have tens of thousands of trial court rulings. And so I think we're seeing it become more of an associate product as well.
Yeah.
Because associates aren't doing the high-level strategy necessarily or pitching. But now that they can actually pull the last 10 summary judgments from a judge in an employment matter or whatever it may be, they're the ones actually writing the initial brief. And so we're seeing it become more of a research product for associates too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely growing over time. It's interesting.
We'll get back to my interviews in just a moment. But first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, let's continue this week's interview. So earlier this year, you had your, I think, second funding round. You got $3.2 million, raised $3.2 million. What are you focusing on right now? Is it the continuing to expand into new jurisdictions? Are you expanding the product in any way?
Yeah, both. So, a lot of it is expanding into other jurisdictions. And excuse me. So when we launched the product late last year, we were in 2 counties. We were in LA County and Riverside. Now we're in 11, and that just takes time and effort. And we're going faster and faster, because we're obviously learning things as we go and getting better at it. And we have more people than we did a year ago. But yes, that money is largely spent on expanding into new jurisdictions. There are also other really compelling features coming out, which I can't elaborate on, but we're excited about them. Right. And so really, that money is being put to the betterment of the product, which ultimately is a big win for all of our clients. Yeah.
I was looking back at some of I've written about you a couple of different times, and in one of my posts, I wrote a phrase, which I assume I got from you, which said Gavelytics uses artificial intelligence to extract information from court documents and analytics to reveal insights about judges.
What a mouthful. Who said that?
Yeah, what a mouthful. So what's the AI part of it?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence is a term that gets used and misused a lot in really almost every industry nowadays. It's a buzzword or buzz term.
Everybody's got artificial intelligence.
Right, it's like blockchain or big data or eco, green. I mean, there's all these sort of, or organic. There's all these terms floating around that are very poorly defined and are used and abused. So we try to be honest and accurate about what it is that we're saying the product does and how it does what it does. And so for us, I can tell you quite sincerely that artificial intelligence is at the core of what we do here. This product would not exist without it. And so it's not a recent bolt-on, so it's not, there are plenty of other companies out there in legal tech that have been around forever that very recently have started claiming that they have artificial intelligence. And maybe they do, maybe they don't, but it's a rather easy thing for a marketing team to say. It's harder to integrate into a legacy product. For us, since we started with nothing, we could build artificial intelligence into the core of what we do. And really, just to be clear about what artificial intelligence is or how we use that term here, really what that means is it's simply the use of computers to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence. And so that, I think, applies very, very well to the review of legal documents. Obviously, since antiquity, the review of legal documents has been done by humans. But now, if you want to review literally millions and millions of documents, it's impossible to do at scale. And so for us, our system is built around AI at its core. And so in particular, we use what's called NLP, so that's natural language processing. And then we use machine learning and a number of sub-disciplines of machine learning, like deep learning and neural nets, to do what we do. And I should point out, too, if you look at our marketing over the last year, if you look at our website, while we do mention in passing that we are powered by AI or we use AI, we try to not put that too forward because, frankly, the market doesn't know what those words mean. Okay, I've not encountered lots of lawyers that really have a big understanding of what artificial intelligence is. And so because of that, we try not to focus on that. And so instead, we try to focus our marketing on why you should use the product in the first place. What does it do for you? How does it make you a better litigator? How do you win more cases and more clients and more business and things like that? And so, in our experience, firms and lawyers are less interested in precisely what's under the hood. Nobody cares how the pistons work and the cylinders move up and down and all this. It's really instead, how fast does the car go? Okay, how many people can I fit in it? Does it look good, et cetera? And so that's really.
And is it going to get me where I need to go?
Exactly. Is it going to get me where I need to go?
That said, we have had a number of law librarians. Mm-hmm. We have had a number of law librarians come into Gavelytics itself, and sometimes we do this via web, where we provide a 45-minute, hour-long presentation on our data process, what we're doing, how we normalize it, how we check for accuracy, how we solve problems. We like to be very open and honest with customers or potential customers, but that has been something that law firm librarians tend to be more interested in than the partners who are
Right.
using the product.
Yeah. Well, the law librarians are more likely to be sort of the gatekeepers these days in terms of vetting this kind of a product and helping the firm make a informed decision about whether it's something that they should purchase or not.
That's absolutely what we've encountered. And the ones who are going to be maybe not as concerned about how do we use this in a pitch, but more concerned about, okay, you've said AI, what does that really mean? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, and also, is it reliable? Part of the reason that we invite law firms to come in, and by the way, if there are firms listening and you've got some people in LA, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to show you around our office and do the data presentation that Justin just mentioned. But from their perspective, their concern is a real one. Are you two guys in a basement with a laptop, claiming you have a legal technology company? And so
I can now attest that you are not two guys in a basement. You're on an upper floor.
That's right. We're in a real Class A building.
Two guys in an upper floor in a conference room.
That's right.
And a whole bunch of guys and women sitting outside the.
We're up to 18 full-time employees,
Great.
and we've got a real office and all these things. But anyway, it's a very legitimate concern. Is this company real? Is it legitimate? Are their numbers reliable?
Yeah.
If you tell me that the judge does something 70% of the time, and the county average is 30%, that's really important. And if I'm going to make a decision in a case on that basis, it better be true.
Yeah.
Imagine if it wasn't, we'd be mortified if we were misleading our customers. And so we've actually been quite successful with the data meeting. We believe in open communication and trust and honesty because we have a very good story to tell, and we want to tell it to people.
Yeah. So what are the questions that consumers of legal products should be asking when they come to a company like you? Given that you're insiders now and you're developing this technology, and lawyers are so confused about the terminology and the different platforms out there, how do they go about figuring it out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So this year, I have personally been to two, and Justin's been to another. We collectively have been to multiple conferences this year. So I went to Legal Week back in New York in January. Justin went to AALL. We went to the Southern California Association of Law Librarians. We just went to ILTA. We're going to the ARC Knowledge Management Show in New York next month. So we've gone to a fair number of shows, and if you walk around these shows and you see the booths and all this, the word analytics is everywhere. The
Right.
word artificial intelligence is everywhere.
Right.
You'll see the term big data thrown around. And so, if I were on the buying side, if I worked for a law firm and I was talking to a vendor that claimed to provide analytics or claimed to rely on artificial intelligence for the product, I'd start asking some questions. Okay, what do you mean exactly? How does the AI work? What is it? How is it applied? Is it something you bolted on so you can just say you have AI, which unfortunately is common, or is it the core of the product?
Yeah, I would add some specific questions I think people should ask on analytics products in particular is, what's your source of underlying data? Because that's going to affect everything. Some people I think maybe don't have a perfect data set. We don't, and we explain what that is, but a customer should tell you. I think you want to know if people are doing sampling or actually doing big data. So everyone's familiar with sampling, which is what we use to predict voting outcomes. You don't go and interview everyone within a district to find out how the district's going to vote. You call a subset of people, and then you extrapolate out. We don't do sampling. We actually analyze every underlying piece of information. I don't know about other companies, but I would want to know that. I'd also want to know, what do they do to check the accuracy of their data? We don't build software and then just let it run. We have independent document reviewers who also tag documents, rulings, and briefs, and we compare that to the software to make sure that the software is getting it right. And we actually do that repeatedly before we even add new cases into it. We're always checking that. So those are
So you're using machine learning to tag the documents, but then you're using some kind of a QC process to make sure that the tagging is
run by the way by human lawyers. So these are California certified lawyers. So these aren't people in foreign countries working for pennies. These are actual licensed California attorneys that help us review at scale these documents. And one thing I would add too is the term analytics is even worse, or I should say, used and misused even more often than than artificial intelligence. And so we've put a lot of thought into a definition of analytics that we like and think is reasonable and think is fair, and I'll share that with you. So the way that we define analytics here at Gavelytics is that analytics is the computer-aided discovery of meaningful, useful, and reliable patterns in huge data sets that enable users to act on such discoveries in new ways. So I know that's sort of long, but really what that is saying, there are three components that matter: meaningfulness, usefulness, and reliability. And so let's talk about each one. So analytics first has to provide something meaningful, right? And so there are certain products out there that claim to do analytics, but they actually will build charts that don't make sense, or they'll provide information that lawyers don't actually care about. And so we've had a joke here for quite a while where we a while back made a chart that plotted on one axis the number of pirate attacks in a given year. On the other axis was the number of demurs filed in a given court. So just because you can make a chart of something doesn't mean that you should. And so that would be an example of something that isn't meaningful. You also want something to be useful, and so if you displayed something that was utterly irrelevant or even worse, just not actionable, that's also not very good. And the concept of actionability is an important one, and something we care a lot about because I'm a former litigator. Justin is. We've got a guy on our team who spent 30 years at Skadden. We have got a lot of big firm lawyers here, and all of us would be very frustrated if a product was telling us that, for example, the judge, his wife's name is Barbara. Okay, like, while that might be interesting, I can't write my demur any differently on that basis. Or if I found out the guy, likes baseball, it's like, okay, I mean, you sort of shrug, okay, but that's not going to help you bring the case in the door. So we want every feature of our product is geared towards telling you something that can allow you to do or not do something that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And then of course with analytics, the output has to be reliable. Okay, so in other words, if the underlying data set is trash, then the output will be trash. You need good data in, otherwise you get bad data out. And so for us, having as complete as a data set as we do, that's enabled us to give accurate, reliable results that users can trust. And there are a handful of products out there that I won't name, but unfortunately, the way they work is really a glorified word search of underlying raw data that then has a graphical output, which is shockingly unreliable, and it's business malpractice to put this out. And I would run for the hills if I were you and ran into this product. But to give you an example of how that wouldn't work, imagine if we were going to aggregate newspaper articles from the LA Times about the Dodgers. Okay, I'm a Dodgers fan. So imagine if I went and collected, say, 5,000 newspaper articles written about Dodgers games and then said, okay, I'm going to use these articles to count up the number of hits that Dodgers players get. So the way I'll do that is I'll run a word search for the word hit, okay, and then say, all right, hit within 5 words of the word Dodgers. Then that will tell me how many hits the Dodgers have had over those years. A lot of legal research is done with that sort of search. That doesn't work with dockets, briefs, and rulings. You will get vastly wrong results. And so they're so-called analytics products that right now work exactly as I've described, and that is not remotely how we do what we do here. And that to me is something that is a big problem with the term analytics.
You mentioned earlier in the interview that when you first started looking into this, you thought Lexis and Westlaw would have an analytics product, and realized they didn't. They do now. Lexis has gone big time into this with its acquisition of Lex Machina, and has been building out various practice areas. Westlaw, with its new announcement in July of Westlaw Edge, is gone, full hog into the analytics realm. What does that mean for your company? Does that cause you to rethink your strategy or your roadmap at all in terms of what you're trying to do?
Yeah, good question. So, when I set about to start this business, Lex Machina had existed for a few years, and Ravel Law as well, although they're not quite as into analytics as Lex Machina is. Lex Machina does a fine job in their space, and so they're a federal product, obviously, and they do limited coverage of the Delaware Chancery Court, but theirs is a rather different.
They keep threatening to get into state jurisdictions.
They do, and I have no doubt that they will at some point. It's obviously a good business opportunity, but we got to know Josh Becker, the CEO of Lex Machina at ILTA. He was kind enough to chat with Justin and me, and look, they do certain things quite well, and they're years ahead of us, but they don't do the state courts that we do. We also have some what I think are unique spins on product functions and features, and we're going to be doing a number of very interesting things in the coming months that I think will further set us apart from them. But theirs is a fine product for what it does. If you're litigating in intellectual property, that's a product you should look into. With respect to Westlaw Edge, I've seen it like everyone else, and it's a good-looking product. Westlaw is obviously a behemoth in the industry, and it looks like they've put some resources into it. It doesn't cover California state courts like we do, so we look forward to being different in that way for hopefully a long time. But even if we don't, or even if they enter our space directly, we believe we'll be able to compete just fine. I should point out that since it's been released, it came out 2-3 months ago. We've signed up a number of AmLaw 100 firms since it's been released, and so at least the reaction in the marketplace has not been one of complete migration over to that platform. And so people still recognize the great difference between our product and some of the other ones that are on the market.
Yeah. So you've had your product on the market for a year now. What's the plan? What's 5 years from now? Where do you want this company to be?
So in 5 years, where we'd like to be, and really well before that, is candidly, we'd like this to be ubiquitous in the state court system, and maybe someday federal. So watch out, Lex Machina, but not anytime soon. We're state court focused.
But ubiquitous across 50 states, or
ubiquitous across 50 states. I want it to be utterly unthinkable to engage in a piece of litigation without knowing about your judge and being able to custom tailor your litigation strategy and tactics to the judge hearing your case. My suspicion, my guess, my belief is that it will reach that point to where people will look back and think, could you believe we used to litigate without thinking about our judge and without tailoring our brief to the tendencies of the judge? Can you believe that used to be the case? And I would argue this is equally as big of a transition as was the transition from legal research in books to legal research on online platforms with Westlaw and Lexis and others. That transition point was huge. And imagine, by the way, if the three of us were sitting in a big law firm right now. Suppose my old employer, Greenberg Traurig, and a new case came in. We're having our initial case strategy session. Imagine if I said, hey guys, for this case, let's not use Westlaw or Lexis, okay? Let's use the books. Let's go dust them off and we'll research in the books. I mean, I'd be fired on the spot. I mean, people would laugh at me. They'd laugh me out of the room. I believe there will be a response equally as violent if somebody in even just a couple years says, you know what? Let's not study the judge for this case. Let's not leverage data that's available for the benefit of our client. Let's just wing it. My suspicion is that will be met with derision, and it should, because there are products like ours that can greatly help litigators like never before, and they should be used.
And I'm going to guess that the biggest obstacle to achieving that ubiquity is just access to the data. Is that right? Or
that's part of it. I mean, like I said earlier, there are two principal challenges. One is getting it, and two is what the heck do you do with it when you have it? Because it needs to be fixed, and it's hard. It's really hard. That's why we can't snap our fingers here and be all over the country. But we're certainly getting there and doing a good job of it. But it does take time.
Well, that's all I had. But any final words you would like to close with before we wrap up? Yeah,
one is Bob. Congrats on the new endeavor and podcast and your role with Lex Blog and all this. I'm very excited to see where where that's going, and I know you'll knock it out of the park like you've been doing for a long time.
Thank you very much. Justin, any last words? Any famous last words?
No, thanks for letting me join. It was a pleasure.
It was great. Well, thanks to both of you for taking the time and for hosting me here in your office in LA, which is not in a basement, I can tell you that. That about does it for this episode of LawNext. If you like what you heard, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive comment. We always appreciate that. This is Bob Ambrogi. Thanks for listening.